All right, red light. Well, okay, well, welcome back, everybody. This is, At the Mic with Mark Moses, roots and culture music show and politics and social issues that we try to cover on this program. And today, I'm just really, really pleased to have a very dear friend of mine, a brother. I consider him somebody who's been a mentor, a leader, somebody who's got a lot of deep experience in the movimiento de Chicana efforts, and all around good guy, as well as a huge political career that we can talk about in the state of Texas and in El Paso specifically. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Jose Rodriguez to the forum. Jose, ¿cómo estás?
¿Qué tal, Mark? I'm doing fine, and buenos días to all of your friends on your podcast.
Oh, beautiful, man. It's so good to see you. It's been a long time. And when I lived in El Paso, we'd always frequently see each other, whether it was an event or going out with the guys or whatever it was. And like I said, you and your family hold a dear place in my heart, man. Thank you so much.
Well, listening to you play your music with Roots, man.
I was thinking the first time that I met you was at an event where Border Roots was playing, and you spoke, and we were on the bandstand, and you came up, and we were over at that restaurant that was over by Old Fort Bliss off of the Border Highway.
The Hacienda.
¿Cómo se llama?
The Hacienda.
The Hacienda. And there was some event that we were there, and
right.
you grabbed the mic, and I don't know if you were in campaign mode or what, man, but you were laying it out, brother. And that was the first time I met you, was back then. Yeah. That was probably in the early to 2000s, yo creo.
That's right. That's exactly right. Good memories there.
Yeah. Hey, Jose, so, there's a lot to talk about, but I want to start with, go back to the beginning, to your roots. Mm-hmm. You're a South Texas boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about how your roots there, and what city there in South Texas and parts of Mexico that your family might have been associated with. Can you take us back a little bit?
Well, sure. I grew up in the lower Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. That's down there by the Gulf of Mexico, at the very southern tip of the state of Texas. And I grew up in a little town called Alamo, which was a small community at that time in the 50s and 60s. It was a predominantly agricultural area, much like a lot of your valleys there in California. And so that's where I grew up. The largest city near to us was McAllen, Texas, which at that time was only 32,000. When I was in high school, 32,000 population. That was a big metropolis for me. I was in Alamo, which was only 1,500 population, to give you an idea. But it's right on the border, right? We were across, we'd go up to McAllen as high school kids and go over to Reynosa, right across the Rio Grande in Tamaulipas. And like a lot of young people here in El Paso that would go over to Juarez, we would go over to Reynosa. We could drink over there, $25 for a Corona beer. You could, with $1, you could have 4 beers.
25 cents. 25
cents. Did I say $25? No, yeah. 25 cents.
Wow.
25 cents.
Yeah. So that was the original drink and drown back then, huh?
You got it, man. And so I grew up, as I said, in a predominantly agricultural area. And so I spent, my summers and after school weekends picking all kinds of varied crops down there. It's a very fertile region. So, it's known for its citrus, its ruby red grapefruit and oranges. And of course we pick tomatoes, onions, bell peppers, beets,
but
you name it.
Citrus was the big crop down there?
Yeah. It's kind of, the lower Rio Grande Valley is kind of like, imagine Florida down in the Miami area.
Yeah.
A lot of palm trees.
The humidity.
Lots of citrus groves and all these other agricultural products. So the beach was only, and you guys are near a beach there in Santa Barbara. I was 45 minutes away from South Padre Island, which in more recent years has become one of those places that the kids go during spring break, Mm-hmm. I have fond memories of that. Eventually, my family, we would pick cotton, we would do everything down there. But then we started to go up to the Texas Panhandle in northern Texas, to pick cotton out there several years, 57, 58, 59. Then in 62, we shifted over into what we refer to as the migrant streams. We went out of state. In 62, we went out to Montana, North Dakota to do the short handle hoe, thinning sugar beets. And then from there, we moved to Michigan to pick blueberries. From Michigan, we went to Indiana to pick tomatoes for the Campbell Soup Company. And then from Indiana, we stopped in Missouri to pick cotton. And now this is already late September. I mean, we even got snow at the time we were picking cotton there before I went back down to the home base, as we call it, as migrants, down in the lower Rio Grande Valley. So that was the introduction to going out of Texas. 65, we went up to pick potatoes in Idaho. And then again in 1966. And you'll be pleased to hear this, in 67, I went to work in the fields there in California, close to Fresno. The labor camp was known as Los Banos, close to Merced.
Cerca de San Jose.
Yeah, yes, close to Merced. And we would actually go over to Fresno, which was, I think, about 70 miles away to the big city, right?
Yeah.
But I picked some fruit there. I did some chabacan, you know, some apricots and some other fruits during that summer of 67. If I had had the means, Mark, you would appreciate this. 67 was the year that they had the Monterey Pop Festival here in Monterey, man. And you had all of these great musicians, and I was stuck in the farm labor camp in Los Banos.
Did you know that the festival was happening?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Snap. Okay.
Yeah, I knew the festival was happening.
Okay, yep. Good. So talk a little bit about your mom and dad and how they got to Alamo, or were they from, did they come from over? What's that connection?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Both my mother and father were actually born in the U.S. They were born near Goliad. Goliad is a small community southeast of San Antonio.
Isn't that where LBJ taught? Isn't that where LBJ taught elementary school?
No, he taught going the other way on the east in Cotula.
Oh, Cotula, okay.
In Cotula, close to Cristal, to Crystal City.
Right.
Cotula, Cristal, all those places were the roots of the Chicano Movimiento back when I was in high school. You know, Jose Angel Gutierrez came from Cristal, from Crystal City. And so I knew a lot of those Chicanos from that area. But no, this was over in the ranches. These were ranches, man. I mean, these are places that you get into these dirt roads and, you know, where you open the gates for the cattle and you keep going and you finally have an opening. There's a ranch house. And so my parents grew up in that kind of setting. I hate to admit it, Mark, but I don't know where my grandparents came from. I mean, I understand they came from Mexico, but I don't know from where. And Carmen gave me, my wife, for Christmas, a present for one of these ancestry tracking companies, you know, that looks at your DNA. And because I'm going to try, now that I'm retired, I'm going to try to see if I can find out where my roots originated.
Yeah, my dad's brother just did one, 70% indigenous.
How about that, man?
You know, our skin's not brown by chance, brother.
No, that's exactly right. So ellos se criaron en las rancherías, you know, I remember as a kid with the goats, you know, and my grandma getting queso out there. They had a stove outside, you know, it was in those days. I was born in 48, I'm 72 now. So it was in the early 50s growing up there. And then they grew up there. Actually, I was born in Alice. There's a town south of
I've heard of Alice.
Antonio, Alice, or Alice, como le decimos nosotros.
Yeah.
But I was there only for 2 weeks. I was born, and my family moved to Alamo, and so I consider Alamo my area of growing up. So I have, you know, and by the way, my relatives from Alice were all musicians, man. Wow. I had some tios and cousins. They all sang, they all played the guitar the old-fashioned way.
No wonder you
I remember as a kid being outside with them late at night, and they're kind of like going around singing, talking about who they had gone out with that day, you know, playing the guitar. They were good singers too, man.
Well, that's no wonder you have such a love for music and you're such a good dancer, man.
Well, I mean, I don't know about that.
Hey,
Yeah.
so I want to turn the page a little bit in that same vein, that same era, and talk a little bit about the racism and some of the discrimination that you might have experienced or you saw around you, because that part of tech, you know, LBJ, you know, he came from down there teaching, as we
Yes.
talked about,
Yes.
and you know, he had a soft spot in his heart for Mexicanos to a certain degree, let's say.
Right. Right.
But we know that in South Texas, está cabrón, man. Está cabrón.
Yeah. No, it was rough. You know, it was one of these ranch farming areas where the owners were, of course, all gringo. They all had their farms and their ranches. We worked for them, and so it was kind of like that sort of plantation type of atmosphere. I mean, I'm not exaggerating in that sense. And so there definitely was a lot of discrimination against Mexicanos, Chicanos during that period of time. And there were absolutely, when I was in high school in the 63 through 67, there were absolutely no Chicanos in political office. No city council, no mayors, no county judges who are county supervisor administrators in Texas. No members of the school districts and the school boards. The Chicano Movimiento started in Cristal with Jose Angel, as you know, because the Chicanitas there couldn't be part of the cheerleading squad in the high school. There in Crystal City, and they did this walkout, the famous walkout that kind of was similar to the one in LA. Right. With students walking out, right, protesting the discrimination. And so, and the same thing I encountered as a migrant farm worker, you can imagine. I mean, we'd be in this truck with a lona, with a canvas on the back. All the families were cooped in the back of the truck. I mean, you're going up to Montana or out to Idaho. That was like a 3-day trip, man. And so we'd stop over at gas stations, so not only to get gas, but so we could use the bathrooms. And you'd see these people immediately put up a sign that says bathroom out of order, right? And so shit, we had to stop and go out into the woods, man, on the way out to these places that we were migrating to. So yeah, no, discrimination was pretty rampant, and that's how I got my start getting involved as a high school student, and then in college at Pan American, which is a small university down there in South Texas at the time. It's now known as UT Lower Rio Grande Valley, but start getting involved in movimiento issues, Chicano movimiento issues, and then at the university really got active against the Vietnam War, Chicanos por la causa contra la guerra. We had Mayo, a Mexican American youth organization down there, and of course La Raza Unida. I was one of the original members of the Raza Unida party when we formed it down there.
Did you come to El Paso for the national conference?
No, I knew about it. And the interesting thing, Mark, I'll tell you this, that national conference was in 1970. So I was a junior and I knew about it. I was very active. We had a Triato Chicano that I was part of. And we had come up to UTEP to do a performance, right? But there were reasons why I couldn't make it to that national conference, and also for that matter, the protests that took place in LA where Salazar was killed. You know, that was what, 71 also.
71, yeah.
71. I had some friends of mine who went and they wanted me to go with them, but I just couldn't swing it, you know, in terms of the cost and all that. So I stayed home, but I was familiar with all of those different events taking place. And the irony is that my wife, Carmen, was involved in the movimiento here. I hadn't moved to El Paso until 1983 when we got married.
Right.
And this is 1970 that when they had the the convention here. You had Corky Gonzalez, Jose Angel Gutierrez,
Reyes Tenejira.
Reyes Tijerina, exactly. And so it really was a grouping of all of these leaders that we looked to as young Chicanos during the Movimiento days, right? And Carmen was actually, she tells me, one of the people sitting at the table, registering people as they were coming into the place where they were holding, I think it was a county coliseum.
Yeah, it was at the county. There's a little documentary on it, but yeah, the Coliseum.
Yeah, right. And as it turns out, I had met a lot of those people that Carmen was involved with Mecha here in El Paso at the University of Texas, El Paso. When I came over and did the Teatro Chicano, I met a lot of these people, and I tell Carmen, for all I know, you were in the same group, but we didn't know each other at the time, right?
Right.
But I was motivated and inspired by the Mechistas at UTEP, not only to form a Mecha chapter at Pan American, and I was the first president of it, I formed it, but also to establish and push for, we had to fight for it, the way they did here in El Paso, for a Chicano Studies program there at Pan American. So yeah, I was steeped in all of that Movimiento stuff.
I'm glad that you raised all of that, and you centered all of that about who you are, because I think that's really always been at the core of everything that you've done in local politics and statewide politics, and how you've advised other young people as they've come up. You've always had that centered in your core, and that's something that's always really resonated with me about you and your family. Is always, that's kind of sits at center with you all the time. You've never lost that, you know. The flag is always hoisted with
I hope I never lose it, brother.
Yeah. Hey, you know, I wanted to share a couple things with you.
Yeah.
This was probably back in the mid 2000s, like 2005 or 6. I was invited to Chicano Park to perform with Los Alacranes.
Oh, yes.
And Chunky was still alive at the time.
Yes, you introduced me to him when you got him to El Paso.
Yeah, I have a picture of when we played there together. You know, and I'm like you and like them. I'm honored that you guys have invited me into your lives, and a part of my legacy is built around all of these stories and all of these memories. And so anyway, so they flew me out to San Diego to play at Chicano Park.
Yeah.
To play the Chicano Park event, or I can't remember exactly but we were at Chicano Park. So so I didn't know, but Corky's kids were there in the park.
Yeah.
So the next day, Corky Gonzalez. And so the next day we went to an event that was at somebody's house in El Cajon. It was a big elaborate thing, right? And so we were there playing. And this young lady comes up to me after we were done, and she has this t-shirt, and it's this beautiful t-shirt that I still have today with the image of Corky on it. And she goes, you know what? She goes, I want to give this to you. My dad would have wanted you to have it.
Wow.
And it was Corky's daughter.
It was Corky. Yeah.
And, you know, it was experiences like that tell you, you know what, you're on the right track, man. Keep on doing what you're doing, you know, because those things happen in your life, right? When people come to you and they tell you things, and it kind of helps to perpetuate what you're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting how in life we have heard of people, we knew of people, and then all of a sudden you establish a connection with them. You're mentioning Corky. I served on the MALDEF board, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, for about 25 years. And one time, Corky's daughter became a member of the MALDEF board. And I quickly, you know, I mean, for me, it was kind of, I never met Corky, you know, but here's his daughter. And of course, the issue at that time, before MALDEF, at that particular meeting, was whether we were going to, as a board, discontinue the relationships with Coors Beer, because, you know, remember that was the boycott against Coors Beer because of the way he treated minorities. And Corky's daughter was leading that charge, you know, in that board meeting. I'll never forget it. she was very, I mean, I could see why she was his daughter, man.
Yeah,
She was
for sure.
very,
Yeah.
very forceful.
Okay, so you're finishing college. You're highly involved in the movement, and you go to. How was the decision to get into law? I'm sure that decision. You were always kind of political, but what was that decision? Did you see the alignment with politics and being a lawyer?
Well, yeah, you know, when I was working in the fields, you know, you were expected to drop out of high school, man. My friends would tell me, "Órale, Jose, you're too old," they said, to be going to school. You need to come out in the fields to help the jefitos. I said, well, that's what I'm doing, man. But I had a mother who wanted me, Mark, to work out of in the shade. She put it very simply. I want you to que trabajes en una tienda con una camisa blanca. That I never forgot that. That her goal was just for me to work in a store wearing a white shirt. That to her would be progress and education. ¿Me entiendes? And so I think I had that motivation, and because of the discrimination that I encountered in the migrant stream and elsewhere down in South Texas as well, I made a decision that I wanted to consider not only going to college, but then going to law school and become a lawyer for migrant farm workers. That was my ambition, right? As I moved into college on a migrant scholarship, as a matter of fact, from the Minnesota Sugar Company, a sugar beet company we had worked for. I was lucky to have a dean at Pan American University that saw some potential in me and helped me identify law schools that I could apply to. And I have to admit this was in the height. I graduated in '71. It was a height of affirmative action taking place, man. And but for affirmative action, I wouldn't have gone to a private law school like George Washington University up in DC, just because it was so expensive and so exclusive, right? It was a national law center at the time. And I got a full scholarship to go there. And I continued my activities while I was in law school. You know, Cesar Chavez was still doing the Great Boycott, and we would go on weekends to the Safeway stores there in DC and participate in the boycott. And of course, the anti-war movement was very strong. I was in law school from '71 through '74, and I was there when Nixon, you know, was booted out of office during Watergate. I stayed another 3 years when I graduated, working for the General Counsel at Housing and Urban Development. And so I kind of navigated around the circles that were the progressive, you know, that's where I got my introduction to the Palestinian cause, hung out with some of those folks from the think tanks there in DC, and with the more progressive Jewish community, the people that were supportive of the Palestinian state. So I kind of, you know, amplified my look from beyond just Chicano and discrimination, maltreatment of our people to obviously a much wider perspective of things in the world. And I think that helped me a lot to be the kind of person that I am. My parents, you know, I'm the only one out of 7 that graduated from college, much less out of law school. My mother never went to a day of school, and my father went only through the 3rd grade. He was in World War II though, and so he, you know, he was up in North Africa. He marched into Italy and all that, but he didn't have an education. He was a jack of all trades. He did mechanics. He did body work on cars, landscaping, you know, and the farm work. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, so you're done at George Washington in DC. You hung out for another year or so, and then you come back to Texas. Where did you come back to, and what kind of law were you practicing?
Well, I went back home to the Lower Rio Grande Valley because I went to work with Texas Rural Legal Aid, which was a counterpart to California Rural Legal Aid here in Texas. It's now called Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. And I made a commitment to do 2 years because I wanted to help my farm worker community where I had come from. And I ended up doing it for 10 years, man. 5 years down in South Texas. And then when Carmen and I decided to get married, I met her through legal services. She was representing farm workers in the northern part of the state. I was the statewide farm worker director of the legal services program. And so I would go from office to office. And we decided to get married, and she wanted to come back to El Paso. And I said, well, shoot, I'll move to El Paso, man. I like El Paso. Yeah. Even though I've been here only one time with the Trato Chicano, right? Back in the 70s, fíjate. And so 13 years later, man, I ended up in El Paso, married Carmen, and we established the Texas Rural Legal Aid Office here in El Paso.
What year was that?
That was in 83.
Oh, okay.
83. And I stayed another 5 years until 1988 when both Carmen and I left the program to go into private practice. I did only 2 years of private practice because then I went to work with the first Chicana elected county judge here in El Paso, Alicia Chacon. And I wanted to help her. She needed help. And so
you were a staffer for Judge.
I was a staff attorney for her, only for her, for the county judge.
For her office. And so so this was in the early 90s then.
This was 1990. Yeah.
So I know a little bit about her and you know, definitely a legend in El Paso with a lot of the breakthrough work, and the first female Chicana judge. I don't know, probably obviously in El Paso, but probably one of the first Chicanas in the state. Or in the
you know. She was the first in everything. First Chicana to be in the school board in Isleta, here in our El Paso region. First Chicana county clerk. First Chicana elected to city council. First Chicana county judge.
Yeah.
And so, no, she was a stalwart in the movement. She was older than us, but she supported Chicano, no question about it, man. Yeah. She was very active.
So
she's my mentor, by the way.
Oh, I know, and beautiful lady, beautiful family. Yeah. You know, before I came home to Califas, we used to live right there on Old County Road.
Oh,
so
it's close to her home.
Las tamales there siempre, bro.
Yes.
Hey, so you were working for the county judge, and I guess that's when you decided to run for county attorney for El Paso, right?
Yes.
What year was that you did that?
That was in 92. After 2 years of being with Alicia, I had committed to 1 year, but I ended up staying 2 years.
Were you elected your first try at it?
Yes, in 92.
Wow. So your first swing for public office, you won.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I had been in public. I you know, going back to what I told you earlier, I wanted to help as a lawyer, help migrant farm workers, but I also wanted to hold public office. I wanted to run. There were a few Chicanos in these positions down in South Texas, like I said. But what happened to me was what happened to a lot of young people in 1974. We were idealistic. We wanted to change the world. And then we had Watergate with the president of the United States engaging in criminal conduct and lying, you know, to people, kind of like Trump does. And I got disillusioned. I mean, I said, shit, man, I don't want to have anything to do with this kind of stuff. And I also got the experience of living in DC and running into raza up there that were holding positions in the government. And they were all people, it seemed to me, that were trying to just move ahead, man. They didn't strike me as people, with few exceptions, that were community oriented, that wanted to really help la raza, la causa. They were people who wanted to see, you would run into them at the cocktail parties up in DC, man. They always were looking for how to move up, you know, into a higher position, into more visible positions and things like that. Looking back, I say, well, you know, that happens to a lot of people. I mean, obviously people want to move up in their careers, but I developed a bad attitude about it. I said, I don't want to be a part of that scene. I mean, I want to help people. I want to go back home and I want to help my farm workers. And I'm And I put running off for office from that time until 1992
So,
because of my experience with
well,
Watergate.
that's understandable. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But one thing that I do know about you, Jose, and about El Paso, and that time I moved to El Paso in '94, and I was
Uh-huh.
there for 17 years.
Yeah.
So one thing that I know about El Paso and what I know about you in being in an elected office is that you had to navigate through a lot of old practices that
Yeah.
El Paso was accepting within certain circles.
Yes.
We can call it corruption, we can call it backdoor deals, we can call it good old boy network, we can call it a lot of different things.
Yeah.
There was a lot of crap that went on, and you had to navigate through that to stay above board, to be transparent, and to not necessarily remain electable, but accountable to
Yes.
public office. Can you
Yes.
talk a little bit about that experience between '92 until before you ran for state senator?
Yeah. I ran for state senator in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So I was almost counting the 2 years with Alicia. I served 20 years in the county of El Paso. And I ran for county attorney. It's an elected position, 4-year terms, 5 times, and I got elected all 5 times. And some people, young people in particular, were asking me, well, how do you do it? I mean, you speak your mind, you rattle cages, you don't shy away from calling a spade a spade. How is it that you get reelected? And I to this day, I tell people who are interested in public office, I said, look, you want to run for office, you need to keep in mind your public service obligations above anything else. There are a lot of temptations in this business. There's always people offering you money to help them out with something, with a commissioner's court decision, with a contract, with this, with that, opening doors. And that's what gets a lot of people into trouble. And the corruption, that's where you see the corruption. And so I always have told young people, mira, you do the job you were elected to do. If you do a good job and you're honest and you're transparent, the people, the voters see that and they will keep electing you. You know, I run into so many people who run for office, some people who are holding office right now here in El Paso, across the state, who like to kind of put their finger up to the wind and see which way the wind is blowing before they take a position, right? They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to hurt their career. They want to move up. And I think that's what is wrong, what's a problem in our public service. Even to this day, I mean, you see it up in DC right now. All of those Republicans that are siding with Trump on different things, they don't want to piss him off. They don't want to piss off his base. They want to get reelected. They don't want to have him run somebody against them. Same thing applied in the Texas Senate, where the lieutenant governor has this grip on the Republican caucus there, and they're in the majority. And if you don't do what he wants as a Republican, then he'll have somebody run against you. He'll even finance campaigns against you and take you off of committees.
With borrowed money from Russia.
Yeah, you got it. And so it's a tough business, but you know, as you said, the word is you can navigate through these things if you stay true to your principles and your convictions, and don't forget where you came from. And see, in my case, right now, if you take you into my office here and I had it up at the Capitol, I have this big cuadro of a nice photograph of cotton fields. You see these rows and rows of cotton fields. And I put it in my Capitol office right above my desk to remind myself where I came from, man. And I've got it now here at the house in my house office because it's so easy to forget. And you get kind of caught up in ambition, in higher office, and in mordidas and other corrupt temptations that people offer you. So, I mean, that's how I managed to get reelected. I never lost an election. I ran 3 times for the Texas Senate. I ended up serving 10 years. And I decided voluntarily to retire, man. I said, shoot, I'm 72. I need to take some time off. I've been doing some form of community work, whether it was as a county attorney, as a state senator, as a legal aid lawyer, as a private practitioner in las colonias, en los barrios, en el segundo barrio here, organizing farm workers, organizing tenants, working with women on family violence issues. And then we were doing cross-border work, me and Carmen, because back in '83, there were no rules that prohibited us from representing undocumented farm workers until Reagan came along, okay? And in '85, '86, he got the Legal Services Corporation rules changed to prohibit representation of undocumented farm workers, undocumented people, period. But when we started here, we had meetings in Juarez, down in Ojinaga, down close to Presidio, downriver from El Paso, and had clients on both sides of the border, man.
You know, I gotta tell you something. You know, first of all, the remarkable record of batting 1,000, you know, for political office. That's and being Chicano on top of that, and knowing who your values. That's especially in a state like Texas. That's pretty cool, man. You know, and when you came with me and Steve Ortega to Santa Barbara before I moved because they were having trouble with gang violence and we just had, unfortunately, we had 2 murders on Sunday night, 2 kids, 17 and 18, here in my neighborhood that were murdered. Man. Yeah, and so we're still dealing with it, man.
Yeah, right.
But when you came, you met our muralist, our Chicano muralist, Manuel Unzueta.
Yes.
Yeah, and
very impressed. He gave me some prints that I have.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, as you very well know, that unfortunately there was a fire at Manuel's house, and he lost a big bulk of his work. And I need to tell you, Jose, that, you know, after that happened, the community rallied, and we had a big giant event for him in the El Paseo, which is a big dining hall in downtown Santa Barbara. And, you know, close to, you know, 800 people showed up for this event. And we had live music, we were playing. Y todo.
Yes.
And I reached out to you and I told you what had happened, right? And you sent a letter from the capital of Austin to me to read at that event.
Right.
And I estaba los políticos aquí en Santa Barbara at that event. And when I pulled out that letter and I read it, people came to me and they said, "How did you get the state senator from El Paso to send a letter about this guy here in Santa Barbara?"
Yeah. And
I said, "You know what? If you knew Jose Rodriguez, and if he was able to be, he'd even be here right now if he could."
I was about to say, I'm sorry I missed that event, man.
Yeah. And I know you want to come back and visit, but you know, it really meant a lot to us. It meant a lot to Manuel that you did that. You took the time to handwrite the letter. Even though your staff typed it up, I know that you hand wrote it, you know?
Yeah, well, no, I did. And the other thing, though, that it brings to mind is I have felt guilty for quite some time because I had meant to send a contribution, a donation. And I guess I got busy and I'll do it later. And, you know, time just went by. So I've never forgotten that. I've always felt like I needed to have helped out. And if I still can help out, I want to. That's why I asked you for the address of your nonprofit, because I want to send you a donation, man.
Okay. Well, I'll send you the address. I sent you some information on our mural project that we're in. You saw that.
I saw it, and I saw some of the murals that I saw with you there when I was in Santa Barbara, and you took us over to the park.
Yeah, man.
Actually, you took us inside into the place. There was an event going on.
Sí, en la Casa de la Raza. Ahí estaba. And we're working hard, man, to preserve our history. You can imagine. Hi, Carmen. Ahí estaba Carmen.
So Carmen, go by. Well, it's the same fight we're having here with Duranguito, you know, the oldest neighborhood that they want to tear down to build a
Right.
stadium.
And,
You know, it's
well, let's talk a little bit about that, because that was a good lucha that you and Carmen got involved in, and
Yeah.
really it kind of bifurcated some relationships también, ¿no?
Yeah, oh yeah, no, it's still going on, by the way. It was brought up in city council.
Tell me something.
We got a new mayor, Oscar Leeser, and some of our Chicano brothers and sisters used the opportunity to again call for the city to back off of building this sports arena and in Duranguito, for those in California who don't know, obviously wouldn't know, it's the oldest part of El Paso. It's where El Paso was established, and it's in South El Paso, close to El Segundo Barrio, which of course is where a lot of the raza originated here in El Paso, and it's got a lot of history. I mean, it's got some buildings where Pancho Villa hung out. It's got a Chinese laundry, because we had a Chinese community here that helped build the railroads back in the 1880s.
I thought where the Norteña restaurant used to be.
Ándale, where the Norteña, that's it, man.
Yeah.
And there's an old brothel, you know, one of the old West madams used to run a place of ill repute there, as they called it. It's still there. And it's got an old firehouse, famous architect, Trost. So, and these guys, the powers that be, it's usually the same set of businessmen, gringos, you know, that I've referred to as Gringolandia, that got me in trouble with a lot of people here because I use that term, but I knew what I was talking about. It's them who want to build a stadium down there and tear down Duranguito, a historic place that I and Carmen, my wife, feel should instead be renovated and built into an old historic El Paso, preserving all of these buildings, all of the stories, the Mexican Revolution, the Chinese community, the Old West. I mean, we got a lot of history here in El Paso, and these guys want to tear it down to build a stadium. So we're still in that struggle, okay? And
Good.
This mayor that got elected, oops, I need to cut this off. This mayor that got elected promised during the campaign to not tear it down. So we're gonna stay on him.
Good.
We'll see
good,
what happens.
Good. You
Yeah.
know, I want to switch gears a little bit. We got just a few more minutes left, and we're gonna have to wrap up the show. So 2020 is perfect vision, right?
Yes.
2020 is perfect vision, and so I think a lot of us see a lot better, see a lot more clear after what we've been through in 2020.
Yeah.
But with your experience, Jose, and what you've been through in life, and you know, growing up in the 50s, going through the civil rights in the 60s, Reagan era, you know, and what we've been through with Obama, and what we've gone through with the pandemic, the murder of George Floyd, just the racial reckoning that we're dealing with, and now everything with you know, just everything. And El Paso has been a flashpoint with what happened at Walmart 2 years ago.
Yes.
You know, it was devastating. I mean, what's your just reaction or reflection on all of that today, especially for young people? What would you say? Because, you know, the wisdom, I think, is something that I'm trying to get out of you right now, because a lot of people don't know what to think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would say this, and you touched on a lot of subjects there. We could spend another podcast just on the subjects. But overall, I think one thing that COVID-19 has done is to shine a light on the inequities and the institutional racism that we have had in this country for ages, and not just against Chicanos, but the African-American community, other minority Asians, other communities.
People in poverty, just poor people.
Yeah, people in poverty, the disenfranchised, the migrants, the farm workers, the immigrants from Mexico and other parts of the world. It's an opportunity, I tell young people, because I've done some podcasts, some Zoom meetings on this with some African-American organizations here, young people's organizations over at UTEP and elsewhere, and say, look, this now exposes to the world a lot of the issues that we've been talking about and knocking our heads against for years, all the way back to when I was your age. You know, the racism against raza, the discrimination in the institutions, the state of Texas denying raza and other minorities in this state access to healthcare, access to a quality education, access to good quality jobs, opportunities that we are always not getting. And now that there's this movement sparked by George Floyd, and now the COVID exposing how people are disproportionately dying, raza, African Americans, people of color are dying at disproportionate levels for the reasons that I just mentioned in part. It's an opportunity for us to organize and to get all these people that we saw on the streets all over the communities across the country, black, white, brown, all kinds of colors, which normally you don't see, right? When I was in the Movimiento Chicano and the civil rights movement in South Texas, you wouldn't see that many gringos along on the marches with us in the protest, man. But it's amazing how people have been brought out of the woodwork, enraged by what the police has done to people of color in this country. And people are demanding change. So it's a hell of an opportunity for us to change the things that we've been working on for years. And so everybody can contribute, everybody can play a role, everybody's got talents, whether it's in public office, whether it's in community organizing, whether it's in the schools as a teacher, in the healthcare arena, we all can contribute. And so I frankly am optimistic, and that's what I'm going to do, Mark. People ask me, what are you going to do in retirement, Jose? Are you going to go play golf like other people? I said, look, I hate golf, man. It's too sedentary for me, man. There's no movement in golf. Fishing, no, I never can catch anything. It's boring. That my friends do is drink beer and you never catch a fish.
You catch a buzz, but you don't catch a fish.
Yeah, you catch a buzz, all right. But I want to be doing things, man. I want change. I want movimiento. Yeah. I want people.
It's interesting you say that, because what I'm seeing is that it's an opportunity to really isolate those folks that have always kind of been the negative voices, or you can't do that, you can't do this. You know what, ¿sabes qué? Now is the time where it's can do, and those who want to do come together and
yes.
not be afraid. Kind of like you talked about where folks that get into elected office, they're afraid because they don't want to disenfranchise people because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Well, hey, the playing field now is there's a great opportunity for us to do the right thing. So I understand what you're telling me.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of different issues that we all, and so I've been telling people, I don't do those things. I'm going to take some time off to rest after 45, 50 years of being involved in this business of community type action in one form or another, elected or not. And then after a while, I want to go back to my roots. I want to go back to community organizing, volunteer work. I'm not going to practice law.
All I can say about that is, for El Paso is aguas. Jose's going to get back out there again, man. Hey, before we break, brother, I wanted to share a little story with you, because, you talked about the fields, the cotton fields, and you talked about the journey, and that's where we come from, That's where we come from. And when Cesar Chavez passed away, they had the services there at La Paz, where the headquarters is for the United Farm Workers, right?
Yeah.
So in that little community center that I took you to,
yes,
they rented 2 vans. So that gente that came from the fields could go, they would take them and then bring them back.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of people, there was only so many spaces.
Right.
And my mom, it was a lottery, and my mom got picked to go. And my mom, she
Nice.
was like you in Los Campos,
See, now.
And so she tells the story, that they brought in food and they were there singing songs all the way, it's about a 3-4 hour drive. And she's, they got up early in the morning so they could be there in time for the service. And I estaba, the Kennedys were there,
Yeah, right.
The
Right.
Kennedy family went to that service. And so my mom tells the story of how it was like going to a party. It felt like they were going, it was obviously the celebration of life. But she said that as they got closer to the site and they started to see como your retrato de the cotton fields.
Yeah.
And they were with all the different fields, all the different,
Yes.
things that people were picking, and they could still see the pickers on the side. They were working, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And she said that there was this emotion that came over everybody in the van.
Mm-hmm.
And there were tears.
Yes.
But she said there were tears of joy, that they had made it that far.
Yeah.
And so praise to you, brother, because that's what you remind me of, man.
Well, gracias. Gracias. I had the opportunity to meet Cesar. When I was in college, I was student body president my senior year, and I brought him down to the Valley to speak, and it created a big uproar with the gringos there because they viewed him as an outside agitator, as a communist and all that. But because I was student body president, I could invite whoever I wanted to, and they couldn't keep him out of the campus. And then I next saw him in person here in El Paso about a month before he died. He was over at our union hall with the Central Labor Union over at the IBEW offices. And that was about a month before he died up in Yuma, no?
Yeah, let me show you something. I saw him maybe a year or so before he passed, and I don't know if you can see that, but he gave me that little pin there.
Yes, of course.
And it's near and dear to my heart. And so, Jose, I gotta let you go, brother.
Órale, pues.
Thank you for your time, man. And I know you want to come visit once we get back on the other side of this. And when I get out to El Paso, I'll come visit you. But I appreciate your time and you sharing your life story with us, man.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Mark. And I need to close by saying to your folks that are listening that they are fortunate to have you out in Califas, because I would like to see you back in El Paso. But you are in your roots out there, man, and that's important.
Timing is everything, and God works in mysterious ways, man. So we'll see.
That's exactly right. We'll see each other soon.
Okay, brother.
Thank you, Mark.
Take care, man. Bye-bye.
Hello.
Okay, gracias.
Igualmente.